The tension within. The streets of Crestwood City pulsed under the mid-morning sun, with traffic weaving through as pedestrians rushed along the sidewalks. Officer Jenny Thompson adjusted her patrol cap and glanced sideways at her partner, Tom Stevens, a seasoned but abrasive officer whose views often left her feeling uneasy. Though new to the force, Jenny carried a sense of justice and fairness that kept her going even when the tension between her and Tom grew palpable. "Can you believe it?" Tom grumbled, gripping the wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "They've made one of them our captain. This department's going to the dogs. I've given 2 decades to this job. And now they bring in someone who doesn't even understand how things work around here." Jenny held back her response. The new captain Tom referred to was Captain Elaine Davis, a decorated officer who'd earned her stripes and recently been promoted. But Elaine was black, and in Tom's eyes, that fact overshadowed every accolade and commendation she'd ever received. Maybe we should give her a chance," Jenny ventured, her voice tentative. She had always been careful with her words around Tom, hoping to keep the peace in their shared patrol car. Tom scoffed. "A chance? You're too green to see it, Jenny. People like her don't change. Can't trust them." Jenny looked away, gripping her own hands tightly to hide the trembling in her fingers. She knew she couldn't confront him directly without risking the animosity between them growing worse. Her mother had always told her, "There's a time for words and a time for actions. Choose wisely." But she couldn't shake the growing feeling of disillusionment that crept into her heart. As they patrolled Main Street, a sleek black sedan caught Tom's attention. The car glided smoothly along, its driver obeying every traffic rule. Jenny barely noticed, but Tom's gaze locked onto the car. "Look at that," he muttered, his tone thick with suspicion. "No way someone like her owns a car like that. Probably stolen." Jenny's heart sank. The driver was a black woman, dressed impeccably in business attire. Her demeanor was calm, her gaze focused on the road ahead, unbothered by anything around her. But Tom's preconceptions had already painted a false narrative in his mind. "Maybe she's just heading to work," Jenny said quietly, hoping to diffuse the situation. Tom's eyes narrowed. "Maybe she's heading to a chop shop. Let's pull her over and see what her story is." Jenny could feel her pulse quicken, her sense of justice prickling. Yet she felt cornered. She was still the rookie, the new kid trying to find her footing in a challenging environment. Questioning Tom outright wasn't an option. So, against her better judgment, she kept silent. Tom flipped on the siren and pulled the patrol car up behind the sedan, signaling the driver to stop. The woman pulled over smoothly, her calm composure unwavering as she placed her hands on the steering wheel, waiting for what came next. "Let me handle this," Tom said, his voice filled with authority as he unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out of the car. Jenny watched through the windshield, her stomach churning. She felt a growing sense of dread about what was to come. Tom approached the driver's side, his posture intimidating. The woman rolled down her window, maintaining her calm. "License and registration," Tom demanded, his tone sharp, devoid of the courtesy he might have shown another driver. The woman's gaze was steady as she handed over her documents, speaking politely. "Of course, officer. I'm Captain Elaine Davis." The moment hung in the air, as if time had stilled. Jenny's heart skipped a beat as she caught the woman's words. Captain Elaine Davis, her captain. She couldn't believe it. Tom, however, seemed unfazed. He gave the ID a cursory glance, his expression darkening further. "Captain, huh? Funny. I don't remember hearing anything about a Captain Davis coming to town." The woman maintained her composure, her voice calm but firm. "Well, I'm here now, and I'd appreciate it if you treated me with the respect due to any officer of the law." Tom's jaw clenched, and his posture grew even more rigid. "Respect is earned, not given," he sneered, barely concealing his disdain. "Maybe you're used to getting by on your title alone, but I've been in this department long enough to know how things really work." At this, Jenny felt her heart pound. Every word Tom spoke was a testament to the prejudices that had fueled his behavior for years, the same bias she tried so hard to ignore. Jenny stepped out of the patrol car, her instincts urging her forward. She didn't know what she was going to say or do, only that she couldn't let this situation spiral further. "Tom," she said, her voice steady but firm, "we know who Captain Davis is, and if she's our new captain, then we owe her the respect she's asking for. The same respect we'd show any leader in this department." Tom turned toward her, his gaze flashing with irritation. "This isn't your fight, Jenny. Don't go getting involved in something you don't understand." Jenny took a deep breath, feeling a new resolve harden within her. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew she couldn't let herself be a silent witness to this. "Maybe I don't understand everything, Tom," she said, her voice stronger than she'd anticipated. "But I know right from wrong." Captain Davis gave Jenny an appreciative nod, her own gaze unwavering, filled with resilience. She turned back to Tom, her voice soft but resolute. "You're right, Officer Stevens," she said. "Respect is earned. But remember that the badge we wear is meant to protect and serve everyone, without prejudice. And if there's any confusion on that, we're going to address it." Jenny's heart swelled with a mix of pride and trepidation as she stood beside her captain. This moment was a defining one for her, a test of the kind of officer she would choose to be. Tom's face turned red with anger, his fists clenched as if he might argue further. But Captain Davis's firm, unyielding gaze silenced him. Reluctantly, he handed back her documents, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked painful. "Fine," he muttered, "but don't think you're fooling anyone, Captain." With that, Tom turned and stomped back to the patrol car, his posture seething with resentment. As he drove away, the silence between them felt heavier than ever. Jenny looked out the window, her mind racing. She knew that things between her and Tom would never be the same after this, but she also knew that she'd done the right thing. Back on the road, she felt a weight lifted from her chest. For the first time in her career, she had chosen to stand up for what she believed in, even when it meant going against the grain. And deep down, she knew she was only at the beginning of a much longer journey. The echoes of change. The tension in the patrol car was almost tangible as Tom gripped the wheel, his jaw tight and his gaze fixed on the road ahead. Officer Jenny Thompson sat beside him, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts, questioning everything about her career, her choices, and the path that had led her here. For weeks now, she'd been working alongside Tom, absorbing his remarks and overlooking his biases, but today felt different. Her quiet intervention during the confrontation with Captain Elaine Davis had altered the unspoken dynamic between them. As they rode in silence, Jenny's thoughts drifted back to the moment Captain Davis had spoken with unwavering authority. Despite Tom's hostility, the captain had stood her ground, radiating strength and grace. For Jenny, that moment felt like a revelation, a glimpse of what true leadership could look like, rooted in integrity rather than fear. Finally, Tom broke the silence. "You're going to regret that, you know," he muttered, his voice thick with suppressed anger. Jenny glanced at him, feigning innocence. "Regret what?" Taking her side, he snapped. "You think you're doing something noble, don't you? Standing up to the big bad Tom Stevens." His sneer was almost mocking. "But one day, you'll realize that this world doesn't work the way you think it does. People like Captain Davis, they're just playing the system. And people like you are too green to see it." Jenny took a deep breath, forcing herself to remain calm. "Tom, I don't see this as taking sides. It's about respect. Captain Davis has earned her position. You don't have to agree with every decision, but that doesn't give us the right to undermine her." Tom let out a bitter chuckle, spoken like a true rookie. "You think everything is black and white, but give it a few years, and you'll see what I see. You'll learn that people like her don't get to the top without knowing how to manipulate." Jenny's stomach churned. She knew that continuing the argument would only fuel his anger, But she couldn't remain silent anymore. The words spilled out before she could stop them. Maybe it's not the world that's broken, Tom. Maybe it's just our perspective. The car went quiet again, the only sound the hum of the engine, and the city streets passing by. Jenny knew she'd crossed a line, and while a part of her feared the consequences, another part felt liberated. The rest of their shift passed in uneasy silence. When they finally returned to the precinct, Jenny slipped away, seeking a moment to herself in the locker room. She closed her eyes, the echoes of her conversation with Tom still buzzing in her mind. She wondered if she'd done the right thing, or if she'd only made things worse. But deep down, she knew there was no turning back. As she gathered her belongings to head home, a familiar voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Officer Thompson," a strong, calm voice called out. Jenny turned to see Captain Elaine Davis standing in the doorway, her gaze steady, observing her with an intensity that both unnerved and inspired her. "Captain Davis," Jenny replied, standing a bit straighter. The captain's expression softened into a faint smile. "I wanted to thank you," she began, stepping into the room. "Not many officers would have the courage to do what you did today. It's not easy to speak up, especially when it means going against the people you work with." Jenny felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you, Captain. I just couldn't stand by and watch. It didn't feel right." Captain Davis nodded, her eyes searching Jenny's face. "I understand, and I want you to know that your integrity doesn't go unnoticed. But I also want you to be prepared, because standing up for what's right often comes with a price. There will be those who see your actions as a threat, those who will try to undermine you." Jenny swallowed hard, feeling a mixture of pride and apprehension. "I know. I think I'm ready." Captain Davis smiled, a look of approval in her gaze. "Good, because we need more officers like you, Jenny. Officers who see beyond the badge, who understand that justice isn't about power. It's about people. And I believe you have what it takes to make a real difference." With that, Captain Davis turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. "Oh, and Officer Thompson," she added, glancing back with a hint of a smile, "you ever need someone in your corner, my door's always open." As the captain left, Jenny felt a surge of determination fill her. For the first time since joining the force, she felt a sense of purpose, a calling to serve and protect in a way that aligned with her values. The following morning, Jenny arrived at the precinct, steeling herself for whatever awaited her. As she entered the briefing room, she noticed the glances from her colleagues, some curious, others veiled with disapproval. Tom sat across the room, his face set in a grimace, his gaze icy as it flicked toward her. But Jenny held her head high, taking a seat near the front, where Captain Davis stood preparing for the morning briefing. As the captain began speaking, outlining the day's assignments and reminding the officers of their duty to serve the community with respect, Jenny felt a renewed sense of pride. When the briefing ended, she gathered her things, ready for another day on the streets. But just as she reached the door, Tom stepped into her path, blocking her way. "So," he said, his tone laced with sarcasm, "you're the captain's new pet, huh?" Jenny's jaw tightened, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Tom, this isn't about favoritism. This is about doing our job right." Tom scoffed, his face contorting with anger. "You think you're better than me, don't you? Just because you've got the captain's ear." Jenny shook her head. "No, Tom. I don't think I'm better than anyone, but I believe in respecting every person, no matter who they are." Tom's expression hardened. "Respect. People have to earn respect, Jenny. And from where I'm standing, she hasn't done a damn thing to earn mine." With that, he stormed off, leaving Jenny standing alone. She felt the eyes of her fellow officers on her, their whispers barely concealed. But as much as the judgment stung, she reminded herself of Captain Davis's words, "Standing up for what's right often comes with a price." Jenny's patrol that day was quieter than usual. She spent most of it reflecting on the previous day's events and the challenges that lay ahead. As she drove through the city, observing the people going about their daily lives, she found herself thinking about what kind of officer she wanted to be. She didn't want to be someone who let prejudice or anger guide her actions. She wanted to be someone who brought peace, who made people feel safe. Late in the afternoon, Jenny received a call about a minor accident on the city's east side. She responded promptly, arriving at the scene where a young woman stood by her car, visibly shaken. As Jenny approached, the woman looked up, her face filled with relief. Jenny stood there, her heart racing as she watched Tom and his friends leave the room, their dismissive laughter echoing in her ears. She wanted to feel victorious. "Officer, thank you for coming," the woman said, her voice trembling slightly. "I wasn't sure who to call." Jenny offered a reassuring smile. "You're safe now. Let's take a look and see what we can do." As she assisted the woman and assessed the situation, Jenny felt a sense of fulfillment that she hadn't experienced before. This was what she joined the force for, to help people, to make a positive impact, even in small ways. When she returned to the precinct that evening, Captain Davis was waiting for her. "How was your day, Officer Thompson?" the captain asked, her gaze warm and attentive. Jenny smiled, a sense of pride filling her. "It was good, Captain. I think I'm finally understanding what this job is really about." Captain Davis nodded, her eyes reflecting a sense of shared understanding. "It's not always easy, Jenny. But remember, every small act of kindness, every moment of integrity, those are what truly define us." Jenny nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, that she would continue to face challenges and opposition. But she also knew that with people like Captain Davis in her corner, she could stand tall, guided by her principles and a commitment to justice. And as she walked out of the precinct that night, she felt, for the first time, like she was truly on the right path. Confronting the old guard. The following weeks at Crestwood City's police precinct were tense and challenging. Officer Jenny Thompson noticed how her colleagues, especially the seasoned officers who shared Tom's views, grew more distant. Conversations stopped abruptly when she walked into the room, and the few who had been friendly before seemed wary, as if association with her would draw unwanted attention. But Jenny reminded herself of Captain Davis's words, "Standing up for what's right often comes with a price." Each morning, she would arrive early, greeting her fellow officers with a polite nod. Captain Davis nodded, her gaze steady. "Then hold on to that vision, Officer Thompson, because change doesn't come from one big moment. It's built from the many small, courageous choices we make every day." As Jenny left the office, her steps felt lighter, her resolve strengthened. She realized that her path was clear. She would continue to push for change, no matter how difficult the journey became. Because now, more than ever, she understood that her actions had the power to make a difference, not just for herself, but for those who needed someone to stand up for them. The next day, as she put on her uniform and prepared for another day of duty, Jenny felt a sense of purpose and pride. She wasn't just following orders or clocking in her hours. She was part of a movement for justice, a fight to redefine what it meant to serve and protect. And no matter the obstacles, she was ready to keep pushing forward. The storm breaks. It was nearing dawn as Officer Jenny Thompson sat in the patrol car, staring out at the quiet streets of Crestwood. A light drizzle misted the windshield, blurring the streetlights into soft halos. She was paired with a different partner tonight, Officer Natalie Hart, a rookie like herself, who had joined the department only a month before. Natalie was fresh out of the academy, and though she was still adjusting to the intensity of the job, she had proven herself to be dependable and, more importantly, fair-minded. "So," Natalie began, breaking the silence as she adjusted her seatbelt, "word around the precinct is that you've become a bit of a rebel." Her tone was light, a hint of a grin playing at the corners of her mouth. Jenny chuckled, though she knew the rebel reputation wasn't exactly flattering. "I wouldn't call it that. Just trying to do the right thing." Natalie nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Honestly, I admire that. It takes guts to stand up to people who've been here forever. A lot of the rookies keep their heads down, but you will. It's different. I mean, everyone knows you went up against Tom Stevens." Jenny winced slightly at the mention of Tom. It had been nearly 2 weeks since the confrontation in the break room, and while she had done her best to stay out of his way, it was clear he was still holding onto a grudge. He'd gone so far as to complain to a few higher-ups about her insubordination, though none had taken his grievances seriously, knowing Tom's reputation. Still, she felt the weight of his lingering resentment, and it made every day at the precinct feel like walking through a minefield. As the rain began to intensify, dispatch crackled over the radio. "All units, we have a 10 to 90 at Crestwood High. Suspect involved in an attempted break-in. Units 22 and 23, please respond." Jenny grabbed the radio. "Unit 23 here, on our way." The air in the car grew tense as they navigated through the wet streets, making their way toward the high school. Jenny's mind raced. Crestwood High was in a quiet part of town, and break-ins were rare there. She couldn't help but feel a gnawing sense of unease as they approached, her gaze flickering to Natalie, who seemed equally on edge. They arrived at the scene to find Officer Tom Stevens' squad car already parked at the entrance. Tom stood with his flashlight pointed at a figure standing near the gym entrance, a young black teenager with his hands raised in surrender. The boy looked frightened, soaked by the rain, his face illuminated by the flashlight in a harsh, unforgiving light. Jenny's heart dropped. She recognized the boy. His name was Malik Hayes, a student she'd met during a community outreach program. He'd been quiet but polite, the kind of kid who kept his head down and worked hard to stay out of trouble. She couldn't imagine what he was doing here. As she and Natalie exited the patrol car, Tom turned to them, his expression smug. Caught him trying to break into the gym. Little punk didn't think anyone would be watching. Malik's voice trembled as he tried to explain. I wasn't trying to break in, I swear. I left my backpack in the gym after basketball practice, and the janitor locked up before I could get it. Jenny glanced at Tom, who sneered. Convenient story. And why were you wandering around the school at this hour? Malik stammered. My bus pass is in my bag. I missed my ride home, and I didn't want to walk in the rain. Jenny stepped forward, her voice steady but filled with concern. Tom, let's hear him out. We know Malik from the outreach program. He's never been in trouble before. Tom's face twisted with irritation. Outreach program or not, he shouldn't be sneaking around the school at night. Who knows what he's really up to? Jenny felt her temper flare, but she took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm. We can check the school's security footage. If he's telling the truth, it'll show him coming back after practice. But Tom was unmoved. He cuffed Malik's hands behind his back, his grip rougher than necessary, causing the boy to wince. Footage can wait. Let's take him in and let the captain sort it out. Jenny's heart pounded as she looked at Malik's face, contorted with fear and confusion. This wasn't right. She couldn't stand by and watch an innocent kid be dragged through the system simply because Tom was unwilling to listen. Tom, Jenny said firmly, stepping closer, her voice unwavering. We need to be fair here. He's a minor, and we have no evidence of a crime. I'm not saying we ignore protocol, but let's at least verify his story before taking him in. Tom turned on her, his expression venomous. You don't tell me how to do my job, Thompson. You might think you're some kind of saint, but you're just a rookie who doesn't understand what it's really like out here. Natalie, who had been standing silently, suddenly spoke up. Actually, Tom, I think Jenny has a point. If he's innocent, then we're wasting our time and resources, and if he's guilty, the footage will confirm it. Tom glared at both of them, his face reddening with anger. But the pressure from 2 other officers seemed to force his hand. With a reluctant grunt, he unclipped his radio and called for access to the school's security system. They waited in tense silence as the footage was reviewed. After a few minutes, the dispatch operator confirmed that Malik's story checked out. He had been seen entering the gym earlier in the evening, and then returning after the janitor locked the doors. Tom's face contorted with frustration as he uncuffed Malik, practically shoving the boy's hands away. "Get out of here," he muttered, glaring at Jenny and Natalie, as if they were the ones to blame for his bruised ego. Malik looked up at Jenny, his face a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "Thank you, Officer Thompson. And you too, Officer Hart." Jenny smiled, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Go home safe, Malik. And next time, make sure you've got everything before you leave practice, all right?" He nodded, his eyes shining with relief. As he walked away, Jenny felt a surge of pride. She had stood her ground, ensuring that Malik was treated with fairness and respect. But she also knew that her defiance had cost her whatever respect she'd had left with Tom, and possibly with others who held similar views. After Malik had gone, Tom rounded on her, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "You think you're some kind of hero, don't you? You think you know better than me, that you're making this department better." Jenny met his gaze, refusing to back down. "It's not about being a hero, Tom. It's about doing what's right. And if standing up for that makes me unpopular, then so be it." Tom's face twisted with fury. "You don't belong here, Thompson. You're too soft, too naive. You'll never last in this job if you keep letting your feelings get in the way." Jenny held her ground, her voice steady. "If standing up for justice and fairness makes me soft, then I guess I'll have to live with that." Tom scoffed, shaking his head as he walked back to his car. "Good luck, Thompson. You're gonna need it." The rest of the night passed in silence, each officer lost in their own thoughts. As Jenny and Natalie completed their patrol, Jenny found herself reflecting on Tom's words. She knew he was wrong. She had to believe he was wrong. But she also couldn't ignore the feeling that her defiance was pushing her closer to the edge, making her a target in an environment where loyalty to tradition was more important than justice. When she finally returned to her apartment that morning, the sun was beginning to rise, casting a warm glow over the city. She sank into her couch, exhaustion weighing heavily on her. But as she closed her eyes, she reminded herself of Malik's face, of the gratitude in his eyes when he realized someone had believed him. That was why she had chosen this path, and no matter how difficult it became, she knew she couldn't let herself be swayed. Because for every Malik, for every person who needed someone to stand up for them, she had to keep going. As she drifted off to sleep, Jenny realized something. Her fight was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The ripple of resistance. 2 days after the incident with Malik, Officer Jenny Thompson felt the full force of the fallout. The tension in the precinct had become almost unbearable. Tom Stevens had taken to spreading rumors about her, muttering to anyone who would listen that she was too soft, a bleeding heart, or even dangerously naive. Some of her fellow officers kept their distance, while others looked at her with a mixture of pity and thinly veiled disapproval. But Jenny tried to focus on her purpose, even as the isolation settled like a heavy weight on her shoulders. Captain Elaine Davis, however, remained a steady and supportive presence. Since their first conversation, the captain had made an effort to check in with Jenny, offering advice and encouragement when she could. Jenny often found herself replaying those conversations in her mind, reminding herself that she was part of something bigger, that every act of fairness, no matter how small, could ripple outward, challenging the culture that had taken root in the department. One afternoon, Captain Davis called Jenny into her office. Jenny felt a twinge of anxiety as she made her way down the hall, knowing that Tom's influence had only grown stronger over the past few days. She wondered if this meeting was about the Malik incident or if something worse was about to unfold. As Jenny entered the office, Captain Davis gestured for her to sit, a warm but serious expression on her face. "Jenny, I'm sure you've noticed the atmosphere around here." Jenny nodded, feeling a pang of frustration and hurt. "Yes, Captain. It's difficult, to say the least." Captain Davis leaned forward, her hands folded on the desk. "I know Tom has been vocal, to put it mildly. But I need you to understand something. Your actions with Malik, They were exactly what we need in this department. It's not easy to break a pattern, especially in an institution where resistance to change runs deep, but it's necessary. Jenny felt a flicker of hope. Thank you, Captain. Sometimes I wonder if I'm making any real difference. I know it's small, but with everything going on, it's hard not to feel discouraged. The captain's gaze softened. I understand. But trust me, these small actions matter more than you know. People are watching you. Some with resentment, sure, but others with admiration. They might not be vocal about it yet, but I've seen a few officers question their own assumptions because of what you've done. Captain Davis paused, as if choosing her words carefully. There's something else I wanted to discuss. The City Council has been pushing for a community outreach initiative to improve relations between law enforcement and the public. Given what happened with Malik, I believe you'd be an ideal candidate to lead it. Jenny's eyes widened. Me? I'm honored, but are you sure I'm the right person? The captain's lips curved into a gentle smile. Yes, I am. You have a natural ability to connect with people, and that's exactly what this initiative needs. It's a chance to build trust with the community, to show them that there are officers who genuinely care. And it's an opportunity for you to inspire your fellow officers, whether they're ready for it or not. Jenny took a deep breath, letting the weight of the offer settle over her. This was a chance to effect real change, to take her principles beyond individual moments of resistance. But she also knew the backlash would be significant. Taking on a leadership role in such a controversial program would paint an even bigger target on her back. I'd love to do it, Jenny said, her voice steady. I know it won't be easy, but I believe in this. I believe we can make things better. Captain Davis's expression brightened. That's the spirit I was hoping for. I'll make the announcement at the end of the week, and we'll start planning the program from there. But just be prepared. The more visible your role, the more resistance you'll face. Jenny nodded, a sense of determination settling within her. She was ready to face whatever came her way. If she could make even a small difference, if she could inspire one person to question their assumptions, then it would be worth it. The announcement of Jenny's new role came at the end of the week, and the reaction was immediate. Some of the younger officers congratulated her, admiring her bravery. But the majority of the older officers seemed openly hostile. The murmurings around the precinct grew louder, and Tom Stevens, predictably, took the opportunity to express his disdain. Community outreach. He sneered one afternoon, his voice loud enough for everyone in the break room to hear. Since when did this department become a PR firm? We're supposed to be enforcing the law, not babysitting the community. Jenny glanced at him, but held her tongue. She knew better than to engage with him directly, especially when he was on a roll. But she noticed that Officer Natalie Hart, who had been her partner during the Malik incident, was listening intently, a flicker of something like irritation in her eyes. What's the harm in trying to connect with the community? Natalie said, her voice calm but firm. If it helps build trust, isn't that a good thing? Tom shot her a withering look. Trust? Since when did criminals need to trust us? They just need to know we're in charge. Jenny couldn't hold back any longer. Tom, this isn't about criminals. It's about the majority of people in our community who aren't criminals, who just want to feel safe and respected. Maybe if we took the time to understand them, we'd have fewer problems to deal with in the first place. The room fell silent as Tom's gaze locked onto her, his eyes flashing with anger. You think you're so much better than the rest of us, don't you, Thompson? With your high ideals and your crusades. You think you're going to change everything just because you're nice to people. Jenny met his stare, her heart pounding but her resolve unwavering. I don't think I'm better than anyone. I just believe that we can do more than just react. We can make a difference, even if it's one small step at a time. Tom laughed bitterly. You'll see. One day, you'll be out there alone, and all those people you want to help won't be there to back you up. Without another word, he stormed out, leaving the room in a heavy silence. Jenny exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on her. She knew she had just crossed a line, and whatever thin layer of respect Tom had held for her was now shattered. But as she glanced around, she caught Natalie's eye, and the younger officer gave her a nod of approval, a silent sign of solidarity. That evening, Jenny stayed late, going over plans for the outreach program in Captain Davis's office. They discussed ideas for community events, workshops, and open forums where residents could voice their concerns to the police. Jenny was brimming with ideas, her mind racing with the possibilities of what they could accomplish. It felt good to think about the future, to envision a department that worked alongside the community rather than above it. As she was gathering her things to leave, Captain Davis stopped her. "Jenny, there's something I need you to know. This program, it's going to be tough. I've seen programs like this before, and they don't always go over well. Some officers, even some in the administration, may see it as a waste of time and resources." Jenny nodded, absorbing the captain's words. "I understand, Captain, but I'm ready for whatever comes." Captain Davis smiled, her eyes filled with both pride and caution. "Just remember, you're not alone in this. I'll have your back every step of the way. And there are others, like Natalie, who support what you're doing. We'll make it through together." The first community event was set for the following Saturday, held at a local recreation center in one of Crestwood's more underserved neighborhoods. Jenny and Natalie arrived early to set up, putting out chairs and arranging tables where officers could sit and talk with residents. A few volunteers from the community were there to help as well, including some local youth leaders and teachers who had heard about the program. As residents began trickling in, Jenny noticed the mixed expressions on their faces: curiosity, caution, even suspicion. She knew this wouldn't be easy. For too long, there had been a divide between the community and the department, fueled by mistrust and past grievances. But she was determined to bridge that gap, no matter how long it took. Throughout the afternoon, Jenny spoke with dozens of residents, listening to their stories, their frustrations, and their hopes for a safer and more understanding community. Natalie did the same, her calm demeanor and empathetic listening quickly winning people over. Even a few of the officers who had initially been skeptical began to warm up to the idea, engaging in genuine conversations with the residents. Toward the end of the day, an elderly woman approached Jenny. Her face was etched with lines of experience, her eyes sharp and perceptive. She introduced herself as Mrs. Harper, a longtime resident of the neighborhood. "You know," Mrs. Harper said, her voice low and serious, "we've seen officers come and go. They make promises, but nothing changes. Why should we believe that this time is different?" Jenny met her gaze, her own eyes filled with conviction. "Because, Mrs. Harper, I'm here for the long haul. I'm not just passing through. I want this program to succeed, and I believe that if we work together, we can make things better. It's not going to happen overnight, but I'm willing to put in the work." The older woman studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Well, Officer Thompson, I'll be watching. And if you hold to your word, you might just find a friend in me." As Jenny watched Mrs. Harper walk away, she felt a surge of hope. The road ahead would be difficult, full of challenges and resistance, but she knew she was on the right path. This was more than just a job. It was a mission, a chance to change lives and redefine what it meant to serve and protect. And for the first time, she felt like she wasn't alone in that mission. With the support of her captain, her allies in the precinct, and the slowly growing trust of the community, she was ready to face whatever came next. The storm was far from over, but Jenny was finally prepared to weather it, one step at a time. Turning the tide. 2 months had passed since Officer Jenny Thompson had first taken on the community outreach initiative, and the progress was palpable. Although the journey had been difficult, filled with resistance from both inside the precinct and out, Jenny felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Each meeting with the community had built new bridges, slowly replacing suspicion with understanding. Residents who had once viewed the police as an occupying force in their neighborhood now saw Jenny as a symbol of genuine hope for change. But the true test of her work and her resolve was about to unfold. It was a rainy Thursday night when Jenny received a call from Malik's mother, frantic and barely coherent over the phone. Malik had been arrested, she explained, picked up by the same officers who had harassed him during the gym incident. Jenny's heart sank as she reassured Malik's mother that she would look into it, promising to get to the bottom of what had happened. Arriving at the precinct, Jenny could feel the weight of the past months pressing on her. She had spent countless hours building trust within the community, advocating for fair treatment. But now it felt as if all her work was on the line. She found Malik in a holding cell, his face pale and drawn with a mixture of fear and resignation. His eyes lit up when he saw her, a flicker of relief that someone was on his side. "Officer Thompson," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I didn't do anything. They just pulled me in, said I was causing trouble outside the convenience store." Jenny nodded, her heart heavy with a mixture of anger and sadness. She knew Malik. He wasn't the type to stir up trouble. But some of her colleagues saw only his skin color, unable to look past their own biases. "Don't worry, Malik. I'm here now. And I'm going to get you out of here," she promised, giving his shoulder a reassuring squeeze. She turned to one of the officers on duty, a young man who had joined the force around the same time she had. "Why is he being held? What's the charge?" The officer hesitated, glancing over his shoulder before muttering, "Disturbing the peace. That's what Stevens said. I didn't see it myself, but Tom seemed sure." Of course, Jenny thought, feeling a surge of frustration. Tom Stevens, still clinging to his prejudices, wielding his authority to reinforce them. She felt the weight of everything she had fought for: fairness, justice, accountability, threatened by one officer's narrow-mindedness. But she also felt a spark of determination. She wouldn't let Tom's biases undo everything she had worked for. Without waiting another moment, she made her way to Captain Davis's office, her heart pounding. She knew confronting Tom directly would accomplish nothing, but with the captain's help, she might be able to turn the tide in her favor. Captain Davis looked up from her paperwork as Jenny entered, her gaze sharp and curious. "Jenny, what's going on?" "Captain, it's about Malik Hayes. He's been brought in again, this time for disturbing the peace. But I'm certain it's a misunderstanding, or worse, an abuse of authority," Jenny said, her voice steady but edged with urgency. "Tom's the one who arrested him, and I don't believe for a second that Malik was causing trouble." The captain's expression hardened. "This has gone on long enough," she said, rising from her desk. "Jenny, I think it's time we take a stand. You've shown incredible commitment to this community, and it's unacceptable that certain individuals on this force are undermining that work." Together, they made their way to the holding area, where Tom was standing with a few other officers, his arms folded, watching Malik through the bars with an expression of disdain. "Officer Stevens," Captain Davis said, her voice icy with authority, "I'd like to speak with you in my office." "Now." Tom's face darkened, but he followed her, casting a scornful glance at Jenny as he passed. She held her ground, refusing to look away. She could feel the eyes of the other officers on her, some watching with mild interest, others with barely disguised hostility. But she didn't care. She was fighting for Malik, and for every resident who had been treated as less than human by those sworn to protect them. Back in the captain's office, Jenny stood beside Captain Davis as Tom settled into a chair, his posture defensive, his arms crossed over his chest. "What's this about, Captain?" he demanded, his tone dismissive. Captain Davis leaned forward, her gaze steely. "It's about a pattern of behavior, Tom. You've had several complaints from the community, specifically from residents in our minority neighborhoods, citing harassment and undue suspicion. And now, you've arrested a teenager who's already been through an ordeal because of your actions." Tom scoffed. "I'm just doing my job, Captain. These people—" Captain Davis's voice cut through his words, cold and unyielding. I don't want to hear excuses, Officer Stevens. We're supposed to protect and serve this community, not alienate it. Officer Thompson has worked tirelessly to build relationships with these residents, to show them that we're here to help. But every time you target individuals based on your assumptions, you destroy that trust. Tom's face reddened with anger. So now I'm the bad guy because I'm trying to keep the streets safe. Maybe you're both just too soft to handle the reality of this job. Captain Davis's expression remained calm, but her eyes flashed with determination. This isn't about being soft, Tom. It's about being just. And if you can't understand that, then maybe this department isn't the right place for you. For a moment, Tom was silent, his gaze shifting between Jenny and Captain Davis, disbelief mingling with fury.